Hi, I'm Alison. Welcome to Dream Chasers Adventures in Happiness, where my band of superhero guests and I share with you tales of daring do, life-changing journeys towards living our best lives. If you're after an injection of inspiration and ideas to live the life that you want and deserve, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hi there, and welcome to the show where we serve up conversation, concepts, and belief that it really is possible to create what you crave. If there's something stopping you from pursuing happiness, whatever that looks like to you from a career or lifestyle point of view, the stories and insights covered here are designed to help. Now today, the tables are turned. My fabulous friend and podcast strategist and producer, Shelley Röstlund, is going to interview me about what drove mine and my late husband's own huge career and life change. Back in 2012, together we made the decision to throw everything up in the air and totally reinvent what our work and personal lives look like. It saw us leave a central London lifestyle for a home in the Welsh mountains and big careers that we'd invested years in for new jobs in completely different fields. Now, several people thought we were mad. Quite a few thought we were making a huge mistake. But 12 years later, I'm going to share the story, warts and all, about what happened, how we made the transition, and really what it did for us. So I'm handing the reins over to Shelley so she can ask me the questions. So welcome to the show, Shelley. Thanks for doing this.
Yay! I'm really excited, Annie. I'm ready. I think yours and Jeremy's story is really unique, and I think I was keen to dig into it because, like a lot of the people you've had on your show, they're all individual stories, right? Mm. So now we have a couple's story, a couple's transition story. So should we start from the beginning and maybe paint a picture for our listeners of what life looked and felt like before you decided to completely rethink and shake up your lives?
Okay, so for me personally, I've been working in PR and comms for about 15 years. I'd always worked agency side, I'd worked my way up the ladder, and so I was in senior management positions. And for Jeremy, he spent almost 30 years working for software companies. So he was in marketing and he was running marketing for Europe for big software firms. So we had fairly sizable jobs, which took, as most people recognise and are in themselves a lot of time, a lot of energy, and so it was quite full on. And we'd been doing this for quite a number of years. We were living in Covent Garden in the centre of London, and we'd made that choice because we just, on top of the hours we were working and what it took out of our lives, we didn't want to add to the commute. So we were paying an extortionate amount to live in the centre of London just to avoid having to add hours onto our days. And so we'd been doing this for a number of years, and we ended up, it all culminated in an evening. It was a Thursday night, I remember it vividly, and we came home from work. It was about 8:30 at night, and which wasn't unusual. And we had no food in the fridge because we never had any time for life admin like food shopping. So it meant we had to go out for dinner, and that felt like a chore rather than a pleasure, which is outrageous. And so we sat opposite one another in a lock fine in Covent Garden many moons ago, and we were absolutely knackered. We hadn't seen each other all week because of work and the various commitments that we had, and we just looked at each other and went, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing? This isn't living. This is, for all of the supposed perks, and from the outside it looked really glamorous. Jeremy particularly did a lot of travel for work. We had a nice healthy disposable income. We had this lifestyle where we were living in the centre of London, so it looked great. But we were knackered. Exhausted. And there was no life in it. And so in that moment we were like, that's it, let's change it. And we had at that point no idea what we might do, like where we wanted to live or what we might do for work, but we just decided between us that that's what we were going to do. We were going to figure it out and make it happen. And we were fortunate enough that Jeremy had a house from his previous marriage that was in Hampshire that we never saw, we never had time to go to and actually spend any time in and enjoy. So we thought, we'll put that on the market and sell it, and then we're going to move out of London, no idea where, and we're going to change our lives. Who knew what that was going to look like?
So like,
yeah. So we did that, and we. Oh, sorry. Just one more thing. We put the house on the market, and 2 days later it sold, and then we were like, shit. Okay, it's got real. We're gonna have to. That's it now. Right, we're on.
Oh my God. Right. Okay. So like there's a whole mess of stuff going on in this, giving me like my stomach's in a mess just thinking about this, right? So like there were so many things about this, right? So you've got to make decisions, but like what did you, because you know the old advice, like don't change one major thing of your life, or don't change more than one. You know what I mean? And you're changing two. You're changing what you guys are actually doing for a living, for one, and number two, you're actually trying to change where you live. Like, how did you prioritize which decisions to focus on first?
So, like I said, it's like chicken and egg, right? It was like, where do you start?
Yes.
Because our minds were telling us we should start with work because we've got to earn money and we've got to figure out where that is. But the whole point of the change was to change our lifestyle, to deliver, to feel more peace and more freedom and everything that we cared about. And so we were like, no, let's find where we're going to live first, and then we'll worry about what the hell, like how we're going to navigate the work thing. Let's actually do the thing that, is going to like fill us with joy and is the whole reason for making a change in the first place, is that we want to change our lifestyle. So that's what we decided. And so we started looking, because we had no real reason to be anywhere in particular. We decided at the beginning that we were looking around Wiltshire and Dorset areas because that was sort of where both of our families were. Jeremy's mum was still alive at the time, and my family are most of them are in Wiltshire. And so we thought, we'll look around there. So we spent a whole year going around, like looking at different places and trying to find, and we put offers in on things and nothing much happened. And then we came to Wales between Christmas and New Year at the end of 2012, just for a break, and we thought, let's see what you get for your money whilst you're here. and then we saw a few places, and we were like, oh my God, like this is like ridiculous amounts, like amazing. And so Jeremy, being Jeremy, he did all of the research because he loved it, in terms of looking for places, and he had already, like months before, showed me a house, and he would make me look at different things and I'd say yay or nay. And
can I just interrupt you really quickly, Ali?
Yeah.
I'm not sure you told the listeners how you were going to base your decision on the house that you ended up living in.
Yes. So well, rather than thinking about whether or not, it would have this many bedrooms or it would be this type of house,
yes.
What we were looking for, we decided to base it on our joint values. So we both shared values of peace and freedom, and so it was like we've got to feel those things and that's it. That's what makes our decision for us. So we were looking at all sorts of different stuff, but looking for that feeling. And so when Jeremy had seen this house, he'd showed it to me months before. I poo-pooed it because it looked like a dark kind of hovel. But he'd had it in his mind, and so he secretly was like, do you remember that place I showed you ages ago? We might as well just go and have a look at that while we're here. And I didn't know what he was talking about, and so we came to find it, and we drove up the driveway, and we got out of the car, and we just looked and felt the area and the house, and we looked in the windows. We hadn't actually booked to see it, and we looked at one another and said, this is it, this is the one. So nice. We put an offer in. I didn't even see the inside. Jeremy came back the following week because he had some time off work to come and have a look around the inside of the house. And he took a few pictures, but I didn't even see it inside. And we both decided, this is the one.
Oh, wonderful. He's smarter, Jeremy. Forward thinking.
Tricks me, sneaky.
He is sneaky, yes. So, okay, great. So you find the house. Now, I think the bit that I'm curious about is the logistics now, right, of Wales versus Covent Garden. And actually, I think everybody would probably be really interested to hear, like, how the heck did you transition from PR and comms, high-paced you know, London life to being a career coach? Because I think we're all curious, aren't we? Like, how the heck do you make those, you know, how do you make that change?
Well, during the process of us looking to find somewhere, so in that initial year, obviously we were then thinking about, what the hell do we do for work? And for me personally, I had hired a coach to help me with some personal stuff the previous year. And through that process and kind of being a recipient of it and understand kind of being taken through various different exercises, it really made me think. I'd really enjoyed it, and I'd always had a massive penchant for people-oriented stuff. You know, I always headed up the people pillars in the agencies I worked for, and you know, I did lots of training and development stuff just because I enjoyed it, and so that made my decision for me. It helped me understand that that's really what I wanted to do for a living. And so I signed up to a life coach training towards the end of that initial year of us looking around to start retraining in that, with still no idea about how on earth I was going to make that a reality. And while I was doing this, so I started this course, and it was, you know, I was using Jeremy as a guinea pig for a lot of the exercises and stuff. And so that's how we'd come to the value stuff, because I'd been taken through an exercise on my own personal values and articulating them, and then I'd done it a rudimentary version with him, and that's how we came to know that we both, peace and freedom, were our absolute drivers. But I took him through some other things as well, and those exercises, it was like an early version of what is now my career change program. The results of those exercises and conversations we had helped him determine that what he wanted to do was work in the third sector. So he wanted to make a complete change. He wanted to give back. He wanted to do something with meaning. And so he then went gunning for a role which he technically should never have got, because he didn't have the experience. He'd never worked in the third sector, but he went for a role as head of marketing and income generation for a children's hospice in Wales. And I have never in my life seen him do so much work for an interview. Like, he was so passionate about it, and he put a whole presentation together, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park. He blew them away, and he got the job. So he landed this completely different, like, brand new job in Wales. I was in the midst of my training, and of course we found the house, put the offer in, and then everything stalled because that's life, and you get thrown a few curveballs. So we'd had the offer accepted on the house. What we didn't realise at the time is that the builder it was a converted cow shed at the bottom of a mountain, and the builder, unbeknownst to us, had not followed the planning application on a grade 2 list.
Of course he didn't.
No, on a grade 2 listed building in the national park that's in the grounds of an ancient monument. So that stalled everything. And at the time, we were just thinking, it'll be a few months, you know. So Jeremy got this job. So we were like, right, well, he needs to be in Cardiff, but we can't move into this house yet. So we're like, it's okay, I'll stay in London. I'll pack up the flat for, and get that sorted when the time comes. And we had to rent him a flat in Cardiff so that he could begin working for this children's hospice.
Maintaining 2 properties. Jeez.
Yeah, so costing us a little bit, but we were like, it's okay, it'll be like 3 months. Haha. Well, 18 months later, we were still living in separate places. So I was living in London, he was down in Cardiff, and we were basically meeting in the middle in exciting places like Reading and Swindon for weekends, and then going back our separate ways. So, throughout all of this time, we were apart for most of the time, because everything just kept getting pushed back, because the national park was just finding fault after fault after fault with nonsense things on the house. And so, in a way, looking back on it, like at the time, you're like, it's just really annoying and it's frustrating and we just want to get going. But in hindsight, it was probably exactly what we needed, because it gave Jeremy the time to really get under the skin of a brand new, role and field. It gave me the time to complete my coach training. I relearned to drive whilst I was at it. And so, in hindsight, it probably did us a favour, But 18 months later, we'd hit this point. I'd already renegotiated with my work to work part-time from home, because I thought we were moving months and months before. And so I just said to Jeremy, that's it, I'm not waiting anymore. I've completed my training. We've been apart for too long. So I moved down to Wales into the flat that we were renting. And all the stuff from the flat in London got put into storage. So that we were there another 8 or 9 months in this little flat while I started commuting to London. So I was still working full time throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, so I think what we're getting to is we're talking almost like a period of 4 years, right? So so now you've moved to the flat 8 to 9 months, but now you managed to move into the house at the end of that, right?
Yeah. So finally, 9 months, about 8 or 9 months later, we got over the stuff with the national park, and we were able to actually move in. And so that was it was 2 years and 3 months to the day than when we put the offer in on the house. So we finally moved in. We were a little concerned that we might not get on all that well. Having been apart for so long. In the end, but we were fine. And so we moved in, got settled, and then at the time, just as we were moving, this is the other curveball that came for me, is that I'd negotiated to work from home part-time, but I knew that the road I needed to take to build up my own career coaching practice and actually try and build a business was to go part-time. So you've still got some income coming in, which, rather than scaring myself to death, but then some days in the week to be able to work on building that business. But at the time, I had a boss who I knew was never going to be overly keen on that idea. But as fortune kind of would have it in a way, not for her but for me, out of the blue, she got fired. And a new guy came in who had a completely different perspective on things. And so he ended up paving the way. He was a lovely guy, and we're still friends, and he ended up paving the way for me to go part-time, which was amazing. So that's what happened. So not long afterwards, I went down to 3 days a week working for the agency, but purely from home, and then I had 2 days a week to then work on my career coaching business and build it up in the background.
Brilliant. I think because this is what we I think we all struggle a little bit with making these big changes, is worrying about that financial stability, isn't it? So God, I'm really impressed, because honestly, to go from having this like aha moment over supper in a restaurant, but then to actually make it happen, I mean, I think that's huge. I mean, you guys did a fantastic job of just putting it in action and being committed, I think. The only thing I think I want to know or ask is, like, once you'd made that change, what can you share with us in terms of the impact of the change? So once you're actually in the new place, after all the nonsense, back together, husband and wife, like, what did the change of environment, job, like, what did it look like for you?
It made the most monumental difference to both of us. So for the first time, we, from a work point of view, felt like we were doing something that had purpose and meaning. And, not to say it was easy or, I think you're right, but it in our hearts, it felt right. We finally had time for one another, which was the greatest gift, given what's happened, and given that now, I lost Jeremy earlier this year. When COVID hit, we just went hiking in the mountains where there was nobody around, and we weren't
in the perfect house for COVID.
We were, and it meant and Jeremy retired he never called it retirement, but he retired in 2016 after he lost his mum, and it meant that we basically had breakfast, lunch and dinner together almost every day, apart from when he was off on his travels. So we spent enormous amounts of quality time together, which I am so grateful for and thank God for, given everything that's happened. And it meant we had time for family and friends, and we were actually present, because we're not knackered, we're not trying to squeeze them in. So it's given us this lifestyle and time for hobbies. That's the other thing. I mean, over the years in my old life and old job, I would sign up to do stuff, and then I would never be able to get there, because I just, work was so full on, and you just couldn't, it just didn't work.
just time and energy as well. Like you only have enough to go around.
Yeah, and I'm a massive adrenaline junkie. Like I love adrenaline-fueled outdoor activities in nature, and so I've done so much of that stuff. I've been paragliding and gorge walking, and and I love it, and I have time for it, and so it's all in. From a health perspective for me, I've done a podcast on this already, but I was pretty ill for a great deal of the time in my old life, and
London, yeah.
the change meant that I sleep like a baby. I can eat what I want. I've got no health problems whatsoever. I'm touch wood. I'm very rarely ever ill, and so all in every aspect of life. It just enhanced. It was the best decision we ever made.
And I think what I love about it as well, because Jeremy is a big kid, so for him, he got to, you guys in the end got, full on 9 years together, right?
Yeah.
Doing the things that you both love, but he got to travel, didn't he? He got to be a proper right, these are the things I want to do, and this is where I want to go.
Yeah, and part of it, part of also the kind of the move to Wales. It was when we were looking around and realised what you got for your money here compared to London and other larger cities. Is we could it meant we didn't have to make the same amounts of money that we did before to live a much bigger and more fulfilling life. And so instead, we could earn far less if we wanted to, and that's what Jeremy did. He effectively cut his salary in half to go and work for the hospice. But he was still, so much richer for it, and it meant that he had the time when he retired to go off and travel and do all the things he wanted to do.
Nice. Right, we're almost coming to the end of our time together, though, Ellie. But before we do. I want to know what do you want anybody listening today? What do you want them to take away from your story and what you and Jeremy actually learned about making this big change and actually being committed to shifting life as you knew it? What do you want them to take away?
I suppose the main message is live. Don't wait. Don't put off exploring and making decisions that will improve and enhance your life. Make it count. And it's so easy to just think, I can't do it now, and push it down the road. And honestly, if we'd done that, given that I lost Jeremy, if we'd have still been living in the way that we've been living, I would feel very differently than I do about our time together and that loss. It doesn't take away from the loss at all, but it's I'm so grateful for those years. And I think I was listening to this podcast. I was listening to a podcast the other day. And a chap was talking about, I think he was quoting Jeff Bezos from Amazon, who has got this thing about type 1 and type 2 decisions. And he was saying that type 1 decisions are decisions that once you've made them, there's no going back. You cannot reverse. It's done. And type 2 decisions are decisions that you make that if at the end of the day it doesn't work or you don't like it, the door is still open. You can still go back. You can still, step back into what you were doing before, kind of find a route back to where you were. And his point was that most of us live our lives, most of our decisions are type 2 decisions, but we treat them like type 1, like that's it. Once we've made these decisions, there is no going back, and it's just not true. And I had this when we were telling people about this mad move we were going to make. I had quite a lot of people say to me, what if you hate it? What if you guys get there and you've been so used to living in the centre of London, and you find that living amongst a bunch of sheep on a Welsh mountainside is like the worst
sheep, though.
They are the worst thing in the world. And my perspective on it was, well, if we don't like it, we'll change it, right? Because I think fundamentally I could feel that it was a type 2 decision. And so I thought it was a really interesting way of putting it, that often as not, we put big stall on these decisions and go, that's it, like it's a big deal. But have a go, because most decisions you can reverse or you can change back. And I'd said to people, if I don't like it, if my coaching business doesn't take off, if I can't make it work, I'll just do some PR freelancing. It's not the end of the world. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
And I think Jeremy would probably also say, don't wait for retirement to do the things you want to do, because if he'd waited, he probably wouldn't have. I know he retired, but honestly, it did not sound like Jeremy retired at all. He kept so freaking
He
busy.
did.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think he'd probably say that, just don't wait and don't work your butt off to supposedly be able to be free once you're old.
Yeah, well, and I read this really interesting book. I wrote a blog on it actually this week. I've listened to a really interesting book called Die with Zero.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like, and the whole premise of the book is that, you know, you need to aim to die with £0 in the bank. And the guy's argument is that, you know, we all do pretty much as we're told, right? We work, we earn money, we build up stores, and you know, in order for this our retirement years, our golden years. But typically, you know, we tend to earn more money as we get older, and eventually there's like a tipping point for a lot of people that if you don't need to keep earning the same amounts of money because you're getting older and you're not going to need it in the same way, and that as you age, you know, we don't know about our health and, you know, how we're going to be and whether we're going to be able to do some of the things that we really want to do. So his whole thing is like, don't put it off. Like, there is a tipping point. So invest in experiences and making memories and the things that are really important to you, about spending time with your loved ones, as much as you can earlier in the process, because you're not going to need all of this money later and then you're just going to leave it. And you know, it's people's argument against that around, well, what about leaving money to my kids? Like, that'd be really selfish to use it all. And again, his perspective...
I think those days are gone now, though.
Well,
honestly.
But his perspective was, he's not saying don't leave them money, but he's saying give it to them sooner, because it'll be much more use to them when they're younger than it will typically if you die and your kids are like in their 50s or 60s or 70s, when they don't need it as much. So, you know, I just think the whole thing says to me, and my own personal experience with losing the bloody love of my life is live. Just don't put it off.
And that, my friend, is why you do what you do. Can I just make an observation? At the beginning of this podcast, like, in case people aren't watching the video, go and watch the video. But when you started talking about the restaurant story and the aha moment, or your come to Jesus moment, whichever way you want to describe it, you were quite, if I had to observe you from an outsider's, but you were very quiet. Your energy was low. Now we've gotten to the end and you've managed to get back into, it's almost like you stepped into the past and was like, oh God, you know, that really was an energy draining time for me. And this is the way I'm communicating. But now we've gotten to the end and I think everybody can hear it in your voice. You're back with that full amount of energy. And anybody who's really lucky enough, and I am lucky enough to not only have you as a friend, but also have you as a coach. And ultimately, you were born to do the work that you do.
No,
and you've demonstrated that just by your own transition story. And thank you so much for sharing with that. I know it's painful sometimes, but I think by sharing it, you teach us all some, you know, really valuable lessons. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And honestly, Shell, thanks so much for coming on and doing this and interviewing me. You're brilliant. And actually, as an aside, if anyone is thinking about starting their own podcast and is interested in like learning about the services you provide, because honestly, people, it's phenomenal and it's such incredible value. Where can they get hold of you?
So I do run an agency called 𝗘𝗣𝗜𝗦𝗢𝗘. So we'll pop the stuff in the show notes because I'll probably be the one doing that. And I'm on social, so I'm the only Shelley Röstlund out there. So, you know, feel free to, you know, link up with me on LinkedIn. I play in Instagram. Instagram's my entertainment venue and LinkedIn's my kind of entertainment playground for work. But yeah, you can find me in those places.
Fab. Well, thank you. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I really hope that mine and Jeremy's story has provided some ideas and maybe some inspiration on listening to your own true wants and needs and allowing yourself to truly go after it. If you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this conversation and our life and career change story, please do share this episode. And until next time, just know that I believe in you and your ability to create the change that you want. So go do your thing.
Thank you for listening today. I hope our time together has got you thinking about your own adventure in happiness. So please do get in touch. I'd love to hear more about your story. And why not join our Dream Chasers Unite community? There is nothing better than an adventure shared. Until next time, Be brave and go create what you crave.